then we'll move on to Q&A.
Okay, so I'm Steve Poole. I work for Sonatype. I'm a developer advocate. That's it.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Myronas Kalligeris. I'm a lead architect from Atos.
Afternoon all, I'm Adeoye and I'm from XM. I'm the chief architect.
Hello everyone, I am Giannis Kormaris from Accenture. I'm a senior manager and a technology architect. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Konstantinos Sidiropoulos. I'm software engineer, test and the infrastructure chapter lead from Agile Atos.
Welcome. So we only have one mic, so I would suggest you gentlemen keep the mic on stage, and I will ask the first question. What was the most challenging issue you faced during pandemic, and how did you overcome it? So who wants to go first?
Okay, I can start. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting question. And it's not one thing, but if I try to think of one, I would say that we had the setup previously where we could work remotely, but in workplace, you do not only, let's say, build software or other things, but you also build relations. And we had good relations together. We had friends. We could even go out after work for some drinks or whatever. So I think that this was the most challenging part, that it was not easy for me to see people with whom I had very good relationships face to face. So the way that at least me, I tried to tackle this, and since I was leading also a chapter and I knew that there were many difficulties in members of my chapter, was that I tried at least through our collaboration tool, Slack or afterward Team, to set up some call, a time slot, 15 minutes, where we could just jump in and just talk for whatever we wanted. Nothing to do with work, but whatever else we wanted to discuss.
Okay, I will go next. So I don't believe that it is fair to say that there was only one challenge that I faced. To me, it was some challenges that I faced on a personal level and some on professional level. So for my personal life, working remotely was challenging. The work-life balance was something that I needed to figure out a way to do it. Working with children from home is something that it was a new step for me. And thanks to that, I managed, let's say, to acquire new skills and always anticipate, something to happen out of the blue due to the children. And I really love them for that. On the work life, on professional life, the challenges had to do with team building, communications, and productivity. Okay, especially it was very difficult to onboard new colleagues and make them feel a part of the team. For me, this was the most challenging one. I do not believe that I have managed, or we have managed generally to figure out a way to do this in an effective way. We tried several tools, one-on-one communications, maybe some outings, of course, with all the protection measures, but we were missing the real thing, the human touch. Thank you.
Thank you. So, like has already been said, it wasn't necessarily one thing. And for us, it was actually probably the same things that people had to think about, like pivoting to become fully remote at very short notice. For us, that was actually the easy part, because we already were on the journey of enabling people to work remotely. We had the technology that made that happen, probably not as widely rolled out, which what we just did was we accelerated that and rolled that out. But then for us, the bigger challenge was really, that was the time that coincided with us deciding that we were going to go and launch a new brand in the US with new infrastructure, which consequently led to us doubling in size So it really was that challenge of how do we maintain velocity, if even increase it, new technology, learning, hire new people, onboard them, make them feel a part of the culture that we had built. And this was one of the biggest challenges. And I think to a large extent, we've solved that by, making things a bit more structured, having clearer, understood communication channels, using tools and so on. But I wouldn't exactly say all of the challenges are solved, but in a way, the fact that we're able to efficiently and, productively do what we needed to do, launched, the platform at the beginning of this year. So I think we went a long way to learn what doesn't work, what works, and we're constantly refining that, and that's really where we are.
Okay. In general, I agree also with the previous co-panelists. If you think about it, I mean, I come from Atos and especially a division that's UCC, so it's Unified Communication and Collaboration. So we also had a motto at some point. We said, anywhere worker. So you could really take and work from anywhere in the world. So it's part of our culture, let's say, to do that. So in that sense, and I think in general in IT, it's quite easy to transition to a remote work environment. It's a lot more difficult in other industries. So we are a little bit lucky. However, we had some, let's say, particularities, like, for example, our IT department realized that suddenly they had to support 300 people working remotely, whereas the connections that could be done up to that point were like 20, 30 remote workers at most. So this was a big challenge to them, and it was a great success that we managed to overcome it in a really quick time. Especially the developers who started working from home were really happy that they had access to tools they thought were not available. And this really helped. On the other side was, of course, the people focus. So my co-panelists talk about it. It's difficult for people to suddenly find themselves separated. There was a lot of work from HR department to try to accommodate the needs of the people, to try to focus on their well-being. And it was very good that the teams were able to work remotely successfully. We didn't really had any major disruptions in our productivity, and that is very huge. I think a lot of companies had that, and this is very important. And but you still need to find ways to make people working remotely feel, let's say, as part of the team. I think this was mentioned before.
Cool, thank you. So I have a different job from these people. My company is Sonatype, so we're fully remote already. So when the pandemic came out, it wasn't so much a hit to us because we were already working remotely. But what was taken away was any chance of human interaction. And so I think we coped, and then we started adding in more social video calls. Like we had a Christmas party and it was completely video, remote. And so we worked extra hard to get people into that mode. We had people who, that's what they did. They just made sure that the team felt that they weren't imprisoned and they could still do their job. And I think that worked really well. And I think other companies that have got over that hump, what we've seen now is that those barriers that we perceived as part of being in lockdown have now become benefits. And obviously many people now do not want to go back to an office. They want to have the socializing occasionally, but they don't want to go back to the office. So I think we cope for that. The other one, since you've all got two, the other one is my particular role is communicating, going out to developers and talking to them and selling ideas and getting feedback. And of course, conferences stopped. So we just had to then do the second best thing, which was do lots and lots of videos, which if there's any speakers in the audience, we'll go, don't want to do that ever again. So we just coped with that one. But on the first one, we dealt with it and we transformed, I think like most other people do. And now I think it's just business as usual. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah. You can. We don't have a second one, so. Do you gentlemen believe that now, after 2.5 years since the first lockdowns, is the IT industry more essential to the rest of the world, and why?
Okay, I think that this is a question that has been answered, let's say, in these two years. I think that during the pandemic, there were two main areas where companies needed to invest. The first one was the digital part, whatever this was, and the other one was the supply chain. So I will leave this, of course, aside. I think that if someone looks on other major organizations like European Union, for example, that they have budgeted for digital transformation and mostly and most important for upskilling and reskilling of people. I think that definitely the pandemic brought the IT services, the need for this. And I think that the most important problem that needs to be solved in the next few years is mainly the lack of skill set, the lack of people in the industry in order to be able to catch up with this need. So it's very important to invest on people, to invest on their learning, and also invest on new people coming into the industry, on junior people coming into the industry, because after all, it will not be easy to for anyone, let's say, to deliver what is needed.
Thank you. So, I believe that IT is essential in the world that we live in. And by essential, I mean that we know for sure that now, these days, every company is a technology company. And this also used to be before the pandemic. So in terms of the technology, the companies needed them before to do their core business. I'm not only speaking for IT companies, but for the entire, let's say, companies out there. But the thing that was radically changed were the communication and collaboration tools. So we needed to adopt in a more quickly way these tools in order to use them and figure out a way to solve the problems and challenges that we discussed before. So the usage of these tools makes it, I believe, more apparent to us, the technology, because we have technology everywhere around us. We have our video calls in our mobile applications, and we know that this is the only way to communicate. So in a term, we carry, let's say, our office together everywhere we go, and this is very important for all, let's say, companies. Of course, I believe that IT companies were very ready for this transformation. And as Accenture, we used to have although we were working in client premises and we were working together in teams in a physical presence, we were using collaboration tools before, and we had, let's say, to demonstrate and showcase to our clients how to adapt the tools that we were also using before, and now we need, let's say, to have an escalated usage of these tools.
Thank you. So, in addition to what my co-panelists have said, I think IT, obviously, since the pandemic, has changed the perception of the business. I mean, when I think of IT industry, I'm not just talking about IT companies, but, you know, the traditional companies that have IT as a function. A lot of companies who previously viewed IT as a cost center, in many cases, have now begun to appreciate how IT could potentially deliver value for the business a lot more than was evident before the pandemic. The other thing that I think makes it even more important is a lot of new ideas, a lot of new initiatives were born out of that necessity to do things differently. People started looking at other things to For example, socialization of things that you'd never think about before. People digitizing, you know, day-to-day things. For example, there were people who created apps that would give ideas of, you know, walking routes across, you know, the UK, which people would want to use for exercise. There's been the ability to innovate on top of that, other things. You know, it has provoked people to think about problems in radically different ways, which technology can solve. And then obviously the technology providers, you know, cloud providers, consultant firms have also been driven by the need of the pandemic to think about other ways to solve problems using technology. So, I mean, there are myriad examples there. It's going to only continue to increase. Even now that we're out of, you know, lockdowns generally, we still have now a dependency on, you know, some of these systems.
Thanks. Okay, so there were some great points. So some of those things I will say are already somewhat covered. You know, as my co-panelist here said, the pandemic accelerated things. So remote working, collaboration, communication. But also, if you look at the government, I mean, before the pandemic, it was not digitized. I mean, for Greece, it was a major transformation. The same with healthcare. Currently, we start seeing applications. I mean, we even built in Atos applications for virtual healthcare. The same for education. I mean, look at suddenly the schools from sitting in a classroom had to become virtual, and it was very difficult for them. So new ideas come, and this IT there will be a lot more essential. But if we look at the big picture, somebody in 2011 said software is eating the world, right? So we already knew back then that software will really be really important in the IT sector. And I think now with the pandemic, it's not just the industries that realize the importance of IT, it's that everybody starts realizing the importance of IT. That's the acceleration. And if you look at the big trends, I mean, we are going more and more virtual. Look at the metaverse, for example. It might not succeed the way it is, but at some point we will get to a virtual kind of world. We are trying to limit our physical dependencies and constraints and go to more virtual and try to digitize things. We try to we bring blockchain, for example, to disrupt the fintech industry. All these things and existing trends like AI and ML and stuff like that show that the IT sector is growing in importance, and it's getting even more, let's say, important. But we also have to look at the challenges. Like we have the pandemic now, we have the energy crisis, especially in Europe, and we're gonna have the environmental problem, right? So I think IT industry, really there are threats there because all those things can decelerate the economy and that will create problems. But there are also opportunities. I mean, the IT industry needs to go and find solutions to these problems and create those solutions that will help.
Thank you. So interesting. I agree with what's been said so far. You can look at this and some hidden things happened because of the pandemic. And the most obvious one was that the internet got strengthened because we went from a few of us using Zoom and things like that to everybody using Zoom. And of course the quality got better, but underneath that, the internet infrastructure got better. And then because the only way you talk to human beings was via computer, we saw more and more growth in small apps, all sorts of different ways, whether they're cloud-based, we'll have loads of those come up. And they're all new things, and they're all obviously backed by IT. And they've become the norm. we are much more, as a world, we're much more comfortable with interacting with computers than we were before. Your parents, your grandparents, teachers, you name it, they're all just a bit more savvy, and that makes them more discerning. And so the quality of the solutions we provide, the usability, the reliability, has all got to get better, and or is getting better, and has to, and we know how, and that has a big effect on IT. So where we said about things like, software eating the world, well, the fact is that software runs the world. And we have so many instances now where people build unique value out of an app. They have some idea, they've got 2 sets of data, they build an app, and suddenly they're making money. And that's it. The world runs on software. Nobody in this room got here without using software. We couldn't be sitting here without software, couldn't be using mics without software. So it is the underpinning of the modern world. So yay for IT.
Thank you, gentlemen. And last question for everybody. Is remote hybrid work the present and the future? How do these flexible professional environments fit in your industry? I guess you'll be going first again.
Again. Okay. Inevitably, I think that it is a present. And it's very interesting to think, first of all, how, in order to answer this question, I'm thinking of how I would like to work. Personally, I think that I would like to have freedom of choice. And it doesn't really matter if this is going to be from the office or if this is going to be from home or from anywhere else. I think that during these years, we could see that we can work from wherever we want, but also maybe there are other needs, so like socializing, as we said. So I think that at some point, the best thing that me personally I would like to see, because I cannot answer what is going to happen unless I am PT or someone else, is to have the flexibility to work whether from some offices or from home or wherever we want. And to be honest, I think that even my wife would like me to be in the office.
Interesting point, the last one, and all the ideas here are very inspiring, and thank you. Just let me bring some numbers in order to answer this question. From an Accenture global study, we know that 83% of people, they are asking from their employers to work in a remote way. So yes, remote and hybrid, let's say, work way is here, and I believe it is here to stay because this is what people want, this is what people ask for. So the thing that we need to figure out is how to improve remote and hybrid working, because after all, this is going to be the work, not the work that we used to know, but this is the work actually now. So from another study, this time from Microsoft, and it is a very interesting one, it was published from Satya CEO this week or the last week. There are 3 challenges here to focus. One is the productivity challenge, and it is very interesting that if you go and ask the employees, they believe, the 80% of them believe that they are productive, while only the 12% of managers believe that they are productive. And this is they name it, and I would like to use the same phrase. This is a productivity paranoia in Greek, or paranoia, a more English word. And we need to figure out why people have this perception, what is wrong, okay? And also, the other thing that we need to improve is we need to embrace the fact that people want to go to the office to see their friends rather to see their bosses or their company. Okay, so we need to figure a way to leverage this kind of contact human in order to make a better work environment for everyone. And the last thing is, the last thing is, we need, and it is very challenging for the companies now to engage people and tackle attrition. Okay, due to remote working, you have a vast amount of opportunities with a vast range of salaries out there, and it is up to the companies to make a challenging working environment and always try to find ways. There is not only one way to have their people, especially in IT, to learn and grow. Because I believe someone will stay in an environment, or you will make a more difficult decision for him to leave a working environment if he's growing as an individual. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So the whole concept of hybrid work, if you think about it, it's born off the idea of flexibility. And if you think about it in the context of a worker-employer arrangement, that flexibility can actually go both ways. So it's flexibility for the employee to work how he wants, or when he wants, or where he wants, and flexibility for the employer in some cases to get work done in a different way, 24/7, from different places in different modes. So I think really it is definitely here, hybrid work, as part of that flexibility that employees are beginning to demand. It's already legislated in countries like the UK, where employees need to be given flexibility. But then it's also gaining traction around the world in other countries like even Canada. But then the thing that really needs to be put in place for this to really be the future, for the reasons that, you know, have been stated, like the fact that you're now competing internationally with, you know, talent. And in the IT industry, we know today it's really difficult to find talent. I mean, we're all here hoping some people would come work for us. So, you know, it's that challenge. Because of that, you now need to also think about how you offer that flexibility. You need to address the things that could make that flexibility become a challenge, like how do you address communication when people adopt that flexibility? How do you prevent the overburdening of managers having to manage that, you know, scheduling or knowing where people are or how they're going to be working, or, you know, things like that. So it's really about companies being able to put in place both the structure, open up the ability for people to work remotely or flexibly to everyone, and not just constrained to even people who can work on a computer. You need to give that same level of flexibility to people who probably have office jobs. Find ways to do that, you know, introduce some sort of swap patterns and things like that. And then address those challenges with communication and social interaction. But yeah, I think it is definitely here in one shape or form. We just need to keep finding ways to try out different ways to address the problems and, you know, iterate. Thank you.
So, I mean, it was mentioned, right? Hybrid is here. One of the major concerns I've been hearing about hybrid, and they are valid concerns, is that people don't communicate like they do in the office. And I was thinking about this, and I realized that I've been seeing that teams that communicate through a social kind of chat application have a different way of doing it when they are together rather than when they are separate. So when they are separate, they write on a chat, they discuss all the things together. And even if somebody is missing, he comes back and he sees what the others discussed, and he can join in. He can search for all the things somebody told him because it's there in the chat. So I'm not saying it's a solution, but it's a different way of communicating that brings value. So we don't necessarily need to say that because we are working at home, we don't communicate properly. Of course, there are challenges, right? I will mention the challenges also. They were mentioned before. You need to keep the people engaged. You need to make sure that the teams feel connected. You need to make sure that everybody doesn't feel, alone and that nobody cares about him. They need to be part of the company, and so it's a burden for the HR department, but also for all the managers to find a way to have this spirit of community and group within the company, so that even remote workers feel like part of it, and they don't feel like they're missing stuff. But apart from those problems, there are, of course, the benefits, right? The remote working is here, and if you look at it, sorry, I lost my line of thought. Yeah. I mean, there are benefits like you cut on pricing, you on cost, sorry. You have less traffic, there are things like that, right? You need to find a way to adapt. And I think it's here to stay.
So yes, here to stay. Maybe not exactly the way that we have it now. There's some things I think we have to address. So, but one observation is that since my company has been hiring through the year, we noticed this trend towards people who look at coming into the office as a chore, and that they would like my company to pay more. You want me to come to your office? You want me to spend my time on the train to go there? So there are people who begin to think like that. And so that definitely shows that there is a shift here. The first challenge is that, which we have to deal with, is the sort of the team working thing, but it's more the mental health. We have all these people working from home, and if you're unlucky and you're on your own, or you're in an apartment and you have your bedroom and you have your office and a few steps, and you never see another human being, that's bad, right? We know what it was like in the pandemic, and we can't continue that. The people, you have to feel part of the team. So we have to find ways of bringing people together, and we can't do that over a TV, over a video screen. We haven't figured that one. People have to get together, and mostly they have to get together to assert that they're human beings. And the sort of things we're doing here in conferences, where you're asserting that your skill sets are valuable and other people here, and you have conversations. So businesses have to validate that. That's important. We have to figure out how to do that. The other thing that's knocking around is the idea that if everybody works from home, what happens to all the offices space? And at what point do the government start thinking about taxing differently? So, when we see those sorts of things becoming mainstay, then we know where we are. But right now, I think we're almost at steady state, but I think we have to just go one step further and figure out how we build effective teams where they're mostly remote. But yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Great discussion, everybody. One thing I can say, we run a co-working space, and even before COVID, we saw a lot of freelancers and digital nomads coming our way. Not from Greece as much, because that culture was not here yet. But as you mentioned, when it comes to companies and costs, working remote and allowing people to socialize and network and work from different spaces is also a great solution. But again, gentlemen, thank you. Great discussion, great answers, and we'll see you around for the next presentations, and hopefully until tonight. Okay, thank you.